Good morning and welcome to another edition from the Improve Your Grade, the 1% Way. Today we're going to look at, did the trainer identify the pupils' learning goals and needs? Now, although this is the very first one on the list on the ADI forms, Part 3 forms and standard check forms, I'm not going to cover them all in this complete order, but this is to me one of the very most important ones. Without this one, the rest of them don't really work. They all fit together. This is a bit like the foundation blocks. So I'm going to cover this first one. Those who don't know me, look at the first video. It really explains a little bit about me, etc. So my history and where I come from and why I am here able to speak to you about this. But the first one on this series on trying to gain extra grades is choosing the goals and needs. Now, I suppose first of all we've got to ask ourselves, what are goals and needs? It may seem fairly obvious. Some of you who've come from a background like me will have known of something called SMART objectives. When I did teacher training, we were talked about objectives. You cannot teach a lesson without having some sort of objectives, and that's really just the new word for goals. The objectives need to be something called SMART. This was brought about many years ago. I'm not going into the in-depth details, but just to give you some small background about what it is. SMART is about making your goal a specific goal. It needs to be very specific, not a wishy, okay, today we're just going to do a driving lesson, or even to that point, today we're going to do a turn in the road or something like that. It's not very specific. And it's very important that the goals are specific. And so we'll cover that in a moment, but it's very, very specific. And it needs to be measurable. So with all things in learning, you need to either be able to measure them by what we either call qualifying or quantifying. Quantifying is to give things a number, and we often do this in coaching where we give somebody, how do you feel you were out of 5, or how do you feel you were out of 10? So we can quantify it there. Also, you can quantify by how people feel, or how, more qualify it really by how they feel they went, etc. Specific, measurable, and the the next thing needs to be achievable. So given the fact that the lesson time, you need to think by the end of this lesson, what is achievable? And it needs to be there, because if a learner is going home from a lesson not achieving something during every single lesson, they're going to soon be looking for a new instructor. They won't be telling you, but they will. And it needs to be realistic, which fits in with achievable, realistic, fits in with the needs. It needs to be realistic. It's no point trying to teach a pupil how to do a complicated roundabout who cannot even grasp the basics of observations at a junction. It needs to be a realistic goal. And also it needs to be timed. So we would say something, there to say that time. Now normally most of us are now doing 2-hour driving sessions, or driving lessons as we would call them, etc. That doesn't mean to say that you would spend the whole 2 hours literally working on one subject. For me, a 2-hour lesson gives me the chance to teach a learner 3 different sessions. So I might on one of them be doing a turn in the road, or it may be junctions and merging, etc. That would be one of those sessions. There would be 2 others. So to me, the timing would be at the end of this lesson or session would be a 20-minute session. This is a key to where very often we go wrong on the part 3 and the standards check. Because often when we do a lesson, of course, we think of it being in terms of 2 hours. So we get used to spending 2 hours on one subject. We come along to do the standards check or the part 3 test, and of course we only really sort of have 30, 40 minutes, etc. And we find we are struggling. So again, this is part of your practice between now and next week. This is what you're going to be doing, is setting objectives, what can be specifically, measurably achieved and realistic within 20 to 30 minutes. And there's one of your goals. There's one of your 1% wins. But, always a but, It needs to be something the pupil needs. So you need to find out what the pupil needs. So if your plan is to teach junctions and they have clutch problems, okay, the pupil needs to work on the clutch. Okay, it doesn't need to be working on junctions. So teach them the clutch, go back to them, work with them, find out what it is about the clutch. Now, I said it is working on the clutch. That's not working on a turn in the road. Okay, so they develop their clutch. It's not working on the biggest hill in your town to develop their clutch. It's taking them back to the clutch lesson, to that first piece of road, which is possibly on a very, very slight income, and getting them to understand how the clutch works and getting them confident there, taking them back to confident ground. And I'm going to cover a lot more of this when we talk about changing the lesson plans. Discuss with your pupil what they feel their needs are. Okay. Don't ask them what you want to do today, because most people just go, dunno. They won't really want to give you an answer. It's a horrible question, really. What do you want to do today? Because nobody really knows what they want. But if you ask them something more like, tell me 2 things you feel you should be working on, you'll probably get a bit more response there. They'll probably tell you the specific aims themselves. So once you've talked to your pupil, and your pupil may give you a couple of things that they feel they should work on, you've got to be thinking, right, what is smart? Can we achieve both of them in this next 20 to 30 minutes? Or do we need to work on one? Which one would be the most important need for the pupil? Then you could do the first one and maybe the second one. You may look at it and say, well, okay, I understand your need, but there is an underlying skill that they need first. So your questioning might be around things like, well, before we do those junctions, how do you feel your clutch work is? Do you think we should develop the clutch work finally first before we get into this need, etc.? So your questioning can guide the pupil. But if it becomes smart, if you believe their need is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and you can time it in the time, then agree that with your pupils and they become your goals. That's quite simple. So then you would need to state it. They would say something like, today we're going to be looking at emerging for junctions. By the end of this lesson, okay, and they would know that the session is 20-30 minutes, all right, even say in the next 30 minutes maybe we should be able to use our MSPSL routine. There's your one. Position correctly for turning left or right. Approach at the correct speed for an open and closed junctions, and we would be able to make effective observations before emerging. Now, these are tailored for your specific pupil at the time. Not every pupil will be able to handle all of that in 20 or 30 minutes. Some may be just the correctly positioning. Some may be something else, in which case you can break the turning left or right down. Today we're going to look at how to correctly position to the left and how to position to the right, and we can look at positions for open and closed junctions, etc. So it really depends on the needs of that pupil. But think about it, and there will be a golden test for this in a moment. Now, the previous slide just uses one example. There are lots and lots of lessons to suit the individual pupil, as I was saying. So, we need to set them appropriate for each etc. pupil. There are planners and books out there to help you, but few follow the DVSA's own standards. Be very, very careful out there. Some have been written actually over 20 years ago and out there. They look extremely pretty and look very, very nice, and they'll draw you in. But you'll notice that even my terminology here I use is DVSA's wording, etc. I'm tending to use their wordings because that is what I do. This is what I'm sort of famous for. So if you were looking for structure support, I would do a shameless plug here. My own book on the 31 lesson plan, which was written for you, keeps things simple, follows the standards, etc., and can be found at my website, DTE-Elite. Okay. That is if you're looking for something like that sort of support. Remember, these books are not the be end and end all of things. You do a lot of the work yourself, but in there are 31 of the most complete lesson plans that can help you. So let's look at gaining something for this week. How can we gain your homework, so to speak, for this week? I want you to, every lesson this week, ensure you find what the needs of the pupil are. Okay, it won't come easy if you're not doing it. It will take you a while to get the question and answering right, to lead your pupil to what you want. Then state the goals, state them formally. Your pupils might look at you first of all to think, oh, where have you come from? By the end of this lesson, Darren, I would like you, or we will, etc., etc., etc. They're going to look at you, but don't worry, get it there, because this is for you. You will eventually become natural, and they'll just accept it. Just the way you are. And remembering, they're going to be sitting in a car with an examiner one day who's going to be saying to you, at the end of the road, I would like you to turn to the right, etc., etc. So you're actually preparing them for the test. And ask yourself, are the goals smart? Are they smart? So think about it there. Just take those few moments. Set your lesson times no more than 30 minutes. Okay, there's a big win for you. And at the end of the lesson, were they smart? Spend 2 minutes, 3 minutes, once the pupil's gone, thinking to yourself afterwards, think, were they smart? First of all, did I achieve it? Did the learner achieve the goals that we set? And if the answer is no, they didn't achieve it, then you probably didn't set smart objectives. So next time you could think, okay, how could I make those goals smaller? How could I make them more achievable? And now with practice, that will come. So there's your 1% goal, there's your homework. This is the important bit really. So that is the end of this session for this week, choosing your pupils' goals and needs. What I would like you to do is practice this throughout the week, and then comment on the post at the end of the week saying things like how this has helped, how you've improved. If you have any questions, please put them in the post, etc. Put them in the post below, etc. And I'll try and answer them as soon as I can. And maybe one of the other trainers might help as well. Support error, as I said, you've seen this before. Have a great week. And I'll see you again next Monday, and we'll develop the next bit from there. Thank you very much, Tim. Bye for now.